Has anyone ever taken a spoon and spooned into Jell-O? Try grabbing Jell-O and crushing it in your hands. Now, do that to raw meat. All right, so it's been a week since the Charlie Kirk assassination. And as usual, the internet became full of assassination and executive protection experts, ballistics experts, snipers, etc. So I hate to even talk about this stuff because it was such a traumatic event, but as many people have messaged me, they feel like they're getting stupider every post they read and every video they watch, and wanted some clarification on some stuff. So let's go through some various points about supposedly how this was a professional assassin. Now, I should first say, though, that we don't know everything that happened. It is an ongoing investigation. In my opinion, we're probably going to find out that there were other people involved. How fast that one crazy dude reacted and pretended to be part of it was a little suspicious, though. The guy was known for being crazy, and being right there when an event happens could have put him over the edge very quickly. It doesn't take much to trigger some people that have mental issues. So I can't say he was for sure part of it, but it sure looks suspicious. The text messages from the supposed shooter and his boyfriend look very suspicious. They look like they were crafted, and there's very likely going to be some other people involved, and this was a small network and not a lone operator. But let's just talk about what we do know in some of the ridiculousness. A professional shooter does not wear black and then go up on a light-colored roof. Professional shooter doesn't go on a roof. Professional shooter does not silhouette themselves on a roof. These are the things that a person that doesn't know a damn thing would do, and it's also the thing that a person that just arrived on scene and has to pick a spot pretty quickly would do. A person that truly scouted and did proper reconnaissance would have found a spot that they could have shot from that was deeper inside a place so they were exposed. So that's a couple things right off the bat. You don't wear black and then go up on light-colored roofs. You don't wear black ever unless you want people to notice you, which is actually why people like SWAT teams have historically worn black. They want to be noticed and they want to be intimidating. No one else wears black except for ninjas, okay? And they are very real. Now let's talk about the shot. Anybody could make that shot. If that gun was zeroed, anybody could hit a person at what appears to have been 140 to 200 yards. Anybody could make that shot. I could take any person that isn't legally blind. I could put them behind a rifle in a rested position on the range with a zeroed rifle, and they could hit a person. Now, the fact of the matter is, whoever shot this gun missed. Now, when I say they missed what they were aiming at. They did, in fact, hit the man, but no one aims at the neck. You aim at the chest or the head. The neck is reserved for extremely close shots when you're, let's say, hunting, or I was a farmer for a while. I've killed a lot of farm animals, and most of my shots have actually been to the neck. If I was not in a position to make a proper headshot, if I was to the side versus the front, I'll usually take a neck shot, base of the skull, but I'm taking those generally at 25 yards and under on a target that, of course, isn't moving. Otherwise, you would shoot somewhere else. There was a lot of crazy stuff about, oh my God, what kind of sniper? He was so incredibly, shot him right in the jugular, as if a person aims for a certain artery. Pretty ridiculous. He was aimed at either the head or the chest. It doesn't really matter which. The ballistic curve is insignificant at the distance that we're talking about. So, no, he wasn't aimed at the neck. No, he didn't aim at the jugular. He just was a crappy shot and was probably aimed at the chest and hit him in the neck. Okay, so let's talk about ballistics, because this is the ridiculous one that I've now seen. There are guys out there that are even Special Forces guys that are making some pretty ridiculous comments about ballistics and really don't understand wounding. A wound profile has a thing called a neck. Okay, and then we're also talking about a person hit in the neck. So those are two different things. So pay attention to which I'm talking about. So you have the neck of the wound profile. That is the long, skinny part before the bullet expands, fragments, yaws, etc. And you see more excitement to the wound profile, right? So that's the neck of the wound profile. Something like a 30-06, 7.62, etc. has a fairly long neck. The round is fairly stable. So if you are going through soft tissue that is less of a thickness than the neck of the wound profile, you are not in the part of the wound profile where bullets do exciting things. Okay, so there's been no yawing, there's been no fragmentation, there has been no expansion, right? We don't know what type of bullet he was shot with. Very likely it was just, ball ammunition, right? With that round, they're really stable bullets. They don't fragment easy, etc. So it's got a long neck to the wound profile. Now, if you look at a person hit in the side of the neck, if you look at the diameter of the neck, you look at offsetting only 1/4 of the way in versus all the way in, probably only have 4 or 5 inches of soft tissue penetration that you need to go through. So that's going to be inside the neck of many, many large caliber bullets. And you are not going to see excitement. You're not going to see this idea that there's going to be this explosion of pink mist all over the back of the thing. No, it's not. Does not work that way. If you don't hit a bone, if you don't have the bullet in the soft tissue long enough to get through what's called the neck of the wound profile, you have a hole the size of the bullet, but you don't have impressive wounding. An exit wound that is in the neck of the wound profile will look almost just like an entrance wound. They are not impressive. So these guys showing videos of ballistic gelatin, I didn't realize this had become a big deal. These people trying to make ballistic gelatin heads and stuff like that. This is completely moronic. Ballistic gelatin, designed by Dr. Martin Fackler, is a simulant that is calibrated for depth of penetration. That is it. It tests depth of penetration. There is nothing about cavitation that is calibrated. It's Jello. Has anyone ever taken a spoon and spooned into Jello? Try grabbing Jello and crushing it in your hands. Now, do that to raw meat. The elastic capabilities of gelatin and meat are nothing alike, okay? Now, the neck is specific because it has a lot of compartments, and many of those compartments are arteries and veins. They're really tough, they're really flexible. They are not tough and flexible enough that if touched by a high velocity rifle bullet, even if the bullet is still in the neck of its wound profile, they're not tough enough to stand up to that, and they definitely burst. They most definitely burst. And so it is unsurprising that the wound was as fatal as it was, because those arteries are not going to make it, and those are big pipes, and you run out of blood really quickly when they get compromised. That does not mean that you see some kind of Hollywood wounding. So yeah, the ballistics are ridiculous. The ballistic talks are ridiculous. And anybody that is attempting to show you what bullets do with ballistic gelatin doesn't know what they're talking about. They're idiotic. Ballistic gelatin is calibrated for depth of penetration only. There is nothing about the cavitation that can be used from looking at ballistic gelatin and comparing that to tissue, because they do not have the same elastic capabilities. They are not the same at all. They're not calibrated for it. It's never been that. So that's just ridiculous. Another comment that people made is, why did they evacuate him in a private vehicle? Why wasn't there an ambulance? Well, you don't put an ambulance on a target zone. Okay, the ambulance needs to be off the target zone. Also, ambulances are not armored. So the way you do executive protection is you have one of your vehicles close. Hopefully that's an armored vehicle. You have it very close and standing by, and the driver should stay in that vehicle the entire time. You could swap out who is the driver, but the driver stays in the vehicle. The driver has the routes already set to get to the primary medical care, right? The level 3 trauma center, etc. Has the routes to the helicopter evac location where they've already pre-planned to get a helicopter pickup, things like that. So the idea that something was wrong with evacuating them into a private vehicle is itself wrong. Anyone that's done executive protection knows that this is exactly how it is done. All right, let's confront the idea that someone on the ground at the stage was giving some kind of signals to the shooter. At 150 to 200 yards, you don't need a signal. There is no wind call from the position of the target that you need, okay? It would take a significant crosswind to matter, and you could get that information just by looking at stuff. You would not have someone down there making some kind of baseball-like calls, right? That's pretty ridiculous. Now, could there have been somebody involved? Yes. Like I said, there definitely could have been more than just the shooter involved in this. I just was confronting the idea that it was some kind of professional shot. That shot is not a professional shot. That's an amateur. The position taken was that of an amateur. The hit location was that of an amateur because he would have been aiming at the head or chest. So therefore, that was basically a miss that happened to hit a decent location. But from a marksmanship standpoint, he did not hit what he was aimed at. So no, that was not a professional shooter. And then I wanted to confront the ballistic stuff because the idea that 30-06 bullets will cause stuff to explode is ridiculous, especially with that shot placement. So people will be wondering, who am I to even be qualified to talk about this subject? I served well over 20 years in special operations, 3rd Ranger Battalion, the Regimental Reconnaissance Detachment, and a variety of roles in Reserve and National Guard Special Forces, and all of it in SOCOM. And I also have been a shooting instructor. I started my career as a shooting instructor in 1988 at the Mid-South Institute of Self-Defense Shooting, concurrently with my Reserve and National Guard Special Forces service. I've run InSights Training Center, and we have trained over 38,000 people how to shoot. And additionally, of course, I've hunted, and I had a pig farm, and I had over 60 pigs at one time. I've shot a lot of animals with a rifle. That is my experience with tactics, rifles, etc. Of course, I worked executive protection. I understand how snipers work. We also understand how executive protection works. So that's just a little of my background so that you understand where my opinions are coming from.
Hello, my name is Greg Hamilton. I'm going to be your primary instructor for the General Defensive Handgun class. Everyone that owns a gun that's going to use it for self-defense, this is the appropriate level of instruction that they should get.
So once again, grip, clear, lock, ready, sight. Gun didn't fire for some reason. Tap, rack, bang. It still didn't fire. Lock, rip, work, tap, rack, bang. We're going to have a system of being aware, and it's going to start with condition white. It's going to go white, yellow, orange, red, and black. That is the justification for use of deadly force, is the conservation of innocent life. You're going to come back, you're going to come down, you're going to grab that concealment with your middle finger lifted out of the way and holster the gun. Like always, when you holster your gun, gently holster your gun to ensure that nothing is in the holster, in the trigger guard, etc. You don't need to shove the gun in the holster. Place it gently in the holster. Come back to the ready position, and now 2-on-1 exercise.
The exact same size dimensionally as far as the height of the gun and the length of the gun as the Glock 19. The difference is it's much thinner. Full grip clearance, covered trigger guard, and then lastly, it's rigid and non-collapsible. So after I take the gun out, the holster doesn't collapse and I'm able to put the gun away.
No problem at 3.5.